Welcome to Thursdays with Penny, which is my new Facebook Live show, which I'm very excited to be running. And it's really been catalysed and motivated by the fact that I'm working with the most incredible masterminds in our mastermind group. So these are experts, really people who have honed their skills and are quite phenomenal. And Thomas and I get asked all the time, do you know anybody who? And it's very difficult to recommend people unless you deeply know them. So after 5 months of getting to know people, understanding their values, liking them, believing in them, and seeing their extraordinary skills as they coach one another, I get to be able to now interview them. And so it's very exciting. So this is every Thursday at 12:30 live, and we capture it and share it. And some of you are watching it through that, and some of you will be watching it afterwards through YouTube. So thank you very much. Now it's really exciting for me because Kim Adele, she's a phenomenal lady who was one of my first masterminds to join us. It was sort of a no-brainer for me when Kim applied. And it's incredible what we're all learning through Kim's participation in the mastermind. Let me tell you a little bit about Kim first before we then move on. So Kim has, well, let's start from the very beginning. At 15, leaving school, became a hairdresser. And what I absolutely love about her story is she went from being a hairdresser to a C-suite senior leader and in a FTSE 250 company. And I think enjoyed a career there in corporate land. Became a mummy 2 or 3 years ago, which was a beautiful experience and a very committed mummy, and has decided to go out on her own and has now become a non-exec director for a number of boards and works with these boards to make those companies phenomenal, particularly interested in the culture, but especially interested in helping people with imposter syndrome, because it's very obvious that can hold back the growth of a company if leaders aren't really living their true life, but also it definitely holds back the individuals and creates a lot of stress. So 25 years experience in business now, individuals are starting to really enjoy the skills of Kim. So welcome, Kim.
Hi.
Fantastic to have you on here. And I've got 3 questions, and we have about 15 minutes for our interview.
Okay.
So 3 questions, and then I do a little bit of an indulgent moment at the end where I ask you about your experience with Mastermind, which I'll explain why we ask that. It's not purely for our own purpose. But what interests me about this imposter syndrome, as somebody who definitely suffered from it at the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, I called myself an accidental entrepreneur. But I still get it. I still get it whenever I need to be courageous and step out of my comfort zone. I still wonder. And I know you're very honest about that. So tell me a little bit about that and maybe what some of the major issues that you see people coming to you with.
Yeah, so I've been living with imposter syndrome for about 46 years, I feel like, and it still comes back and haunts us, as it does so many. I think Forbes did a report recently that 18% of senior leaders state it's one of their challenges. And I think it's just that fear of it being taken away, of not being good enough. And you have that little voice that seems to take over in your head. And I had the dawning realization when I had my little girl, that the voice in which you talk to yourself becomes the voice in which you teach your children to talk to themselves. And that was a scary moment, because I don't want her to go through her life berating herself the way I did. So I learned a few techniques to reframe. And I use those now with my clients, which is first, whose voice is that? So when you're telling yourself it can't be done, whose voice is it? Because it probably comes from your past. And the second one is, why are you talking? So what are they trying to do? What are they trying to stop you? And then the final one, which is for me about how it helps reframe. I am an overly passionate mother. I believe, like many mothers, that my child can do absolutely anything. So the question I ask myself is, what would I tell Scarlett if she was faced with the same situation? And then I tell myself that, and that allows me to just gently move myself from where I was thinking to where I need to be thinking. And the second thing was just realizing that actually the imposter syndrome was really trying to stop me having too much ego, but inadvertently gives me even more ego, because actually when somebody tells you you're good at something and you immediately go, no, I'm not good enough, you're basically saying your opinion's more important than their opinion. And that absolutely does not fit with my value set. I don't think my opinion's more important. So what I do in those moments is I borrow their opinion for a period. I think if you believe I can do it, I'm going to borrow their belief. And today's a great example. So you believe I can do this interview, so I'm borrowing your belief and hoping you're not wrong.
Yeah, and I think we live in really interesting times here. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of, but there's also a massive amount of ambition, isn't there, in so many people. And the leaders that you work with, this imposter syndrome that you recognise in them, which I think some people might not even know it, they have it. Maybe you help them gain that awareness. That's horrible. What way does it show up for them? How is it limiting them?
So often, one of the biggest reasons people come to me is that they feel in some way vulnerable. So they might not recognise it yet as imposter syndrome, but they've got something that they're concerned about. So often people will come and speak to me because they're lacking some confidence. They might resonate with confidence, or they might resonate with, I don't feel like I'm very good at this skill, or I don't know where it is. But actually, when we start talking and actually start delving into, why do you think that? What is it? What is it that's making you feel that way? It starts to become more apparent that actually they are dealing with their own imposter. And the thing about imposter syndrome is it manifests in a very different way in every individual. It is individual to them because it's about the one thing that they personally feel the most vulnerable about. And I suppose what I try and do is help them to recognize that vulnerability and then recognize it as a strength instead of it being a vulnerability. So actually the thing that you're most vulnerable about is the thing that makes you uniquely you. It's the gift that you've got in the world, and that's why it's vulnerable, because other people might not have the same one. They'll have a different one. And it doesn't mean to say you're better than everybody else at it. It just means that is your power. So when you start to recognize it in its positive light, so when could I use that vulnerability to make a difference? And actually some of that is sharing that vulnerability, and sharing it as a leader without losing credibility has an amazing impact on your team, because it makes you more human and it opens them up to being able to share with you their vulnerabilities. And shared vulnerability with shared purpose allows the team to be significantly more successful, because you're taking out that fear. We're no longer frightened of that vulnerability, we're using it, and therefore we can start to recruit people in that have got strengths in the areas where we're weak, because we're no longer vulnerable to people being better than us.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I want to come back to that superpower stuff. Something I hear a lot is, I think Google started it, this whole concept of creating psychological safety in an organization. And I know mental health is being talked a lot about now. And it interests me that you are leading the way in a lot of organizations by these leaders that you work with, to sort of be the role models of that, to show that you have that vulnerability. Are you seeing that as something there? Is it hard for them to take that on board themselves?
I think sometimes it can be difficult to start off with, because actually when you've spent a lot of time, and I spent the first 23 years in corporate life thinking you can't ever share a vulnerability, you can't ever tell anybody that you are afraid of something, or that you're uncertain about going to do something. And then I remember getting some feedback from somebody who said that I'd made a career out of being self-depreciating and making it an art form. And I say, interesting. Okay, you're going to have to explain that to me a little bit further. And he said, well, you actually are quite happy to share with people that you don't always feel that comfortable, that you're not always that confident, that you do feel not good enough. And I said, yeah, but actually that's because that's honest. And for me, one of the things that is my hot button is people who aren't being honest. And I realized that sometimes you've got to be honest with yourself first and then share that honesty with other people. And in doing so, you actually, instead of being weaker in their eyes, you actually are stronger, because you've had the confidence to share your vulnerability. And once I was able to do that and show with people that you can do it and still lead with credibility, and I've been able to build, a really successful career and now a successful business, whilst sharing vulnerability, but still being recognized as being a leader and being able to take my people on a journey. And I'm really, really proud of all the people I've stayed in touch with over the years and have become true friends throughout my career. which has been as a result of us being authentic and honest and just being yourself, turning up and recognizing that it's okay to be you, because that's who they've hired. They've not hired this persona that you're trying to be. And I think it's Oscar Wilde that said, you know, be yourself because everybody else is taken. And that's a scary thought, but when you embrace it, it works. It really does work. And I think taking those leaders through a safe environment to be able to do that, they're seeing those results. And actually, I'm getting more business and repeat work because people are seeing the impact it has, not just on their business life, but on their relationships and on them as a person, because they're able to be who they want to be and live the life they want.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's the ultimate form of freedom. I know people sort of chase financial freedom and they, you know, even location freedom, you know, they move around the world. And I think the ultimate form of freedom is exactly what you're giving people. That freedom to be themselves is phenomenal. So going back to, I know we started on that, the superpower bit. I love the idea of that, the vulnerability being your superpower and therefore not hiding that vulnerability. Is that something you talk about? Because I know you did a recent speech that had a phenomenal amount of people queuing up to talk to you afterwards. Tell me a bit more about that sort of superpower.
Yeah, and it was funny. So that was, I was terrified, as I am before I do any speaking at all. I don't like really doing it. I hate videos. But the feedback was phenomenal. And some of it was about, at the moment of feeling very vulnerable, just sharing it. So in that particular speech, there was one moment where every fibre of my body wanted to run away. And instead of hiding that, I actually shared it with the audience. I actually said, you know, right now, every fibre of my body wants to get up and run away. But I realise I can't do that. I realise that I've got to continue to talk to you. And therefore, I'm going to do my best to continue to have this speech and to add some value. And we went on to talk about, you know, how you reframe your perspective. And in reframing your perspective, you actually change your reality. And I had 20 or 30 people come up at the end of it, which was just amazing, to talk about the fact that their view was that I appear really, really confident, that I was up there, that the speech that I was giving was really relevant, and that they couldn't believe that there was that, you know, I didn't like being there and I'd wanted to run away. And I shared with them the fact that that was genuinely how I felt in that moment. And actually, I've given myself permission to share that, rather than keep it to myself and continue to try and have a conversation while fighting with the little voice in my head going, run away, to actually share it with the audience instead. And in doing so, you became more human to them. And therefore, they were able to come over and share with me when they got scared or when they felt vulnerable. And then off the back of that, you know, we've had a number of conversations and I actually got some business as a result of it. So it does show how just being authentically you, people will work out whether or not that's going to be of value to you, to them, or it's not, because you can't be a coach for everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's Marmite, isn't it? And the more you niche and attract the people that you can properly work with, the better. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think there's such a life journey we go through, and I think people carry baggage. I know I did, and limiting beliefs and things. So if you now had that younger Kim, and you were talking to her, you know, because we're an age of millennials, aren't we now as well? Yeah. And some amazing future leaders that I come across that I just think are phenomenal. But I know that their mental game is going to be so important to their growth. So what would you say to that Kim? What would you say to her now?
So I think I'd say, like, just be who you are. And as long as you're being kind and you are being honest, just give it a try, because what's the worst that can happen? Yeah. All you're going to do is learn something. You're either going to learn a way not to do it, or you're going to learn that you can do it really. But either way, you're going to be one step closer. So I must admit, I wrote a little quote for my little girl, which was to stay curious, to be kind, to be honest, to dream big, and to believe, because she's proof that miracles happen. And I realized in that moment that every single one of us is proof that miracles happen to somebody. So we should just believe in ourselves a little bit more, and go out and shine our light on the world.
Yeah, and I think when you do that, you give permission, don't you, for others to be able to do that. But you know what I feel when I look at your your career track record, I think you're hard on yourself, because I feel that you've always been yourself really in your roles, but maybe inside yourself you didn't see that vulnerability and that realness was a strength. And and so now that superpower is inside you, that you know it's a strength, and we love it in the mastermind. So what I find fascinating is part of my journey was being an incredibly independent person, far too independent. I found it hard to ask for help. And I bet when you're coaching people, some of them are attracted to you through their content, and some of them, it might be the first time they've really asked for help. And it's one of the things that I loved about building this mastermind, because I learned to ask for help last year for the first time, and it was a collection of people that helped me. So whilst Thomas and I facilitate the mastermind, it's the masterminds in the room that have a phenomenal impact on each other throughout the month and at the day. Do you mind sharing with me a bit why at this point in your life you decided to invest in yourself and join a mastermind?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've had a fairly rocky personal journey, and decided that I perhaps needed to ask for help better. And I've got amazing friends, I've got amazing family, I've got the most blessed life when it comes to the people around me. But the one piece of feedback they always give me is, you never ever ask for help. And I realized that that's not because I don't think they'll help me. It's because I know absolutely without doubt that they would help me in a heartbeat. Yeah. And therefore that gives me some strength. So I realized that I needed to try and help myself in my business growth and in my mindset. And I think life happens for a reason. I think it was fate that we kind of, the note came through about your mastermind group, and I was like, this is it. This is how I'm going to invest in myself. Because before that, it had always been about, I'll do a course. If I do a course and I get another qualification, then I'll feel a little bit better, like I'm not still going to be found out for that MBQ in hairdressing, and people are going to think I've got some validation. And I realized the validation I wanted was from myself. I wanted to feel comfortable in my skin, and therefore I needed to be able to go and open up and share my journey and my vulnerability and learn from other people. So I had the privilege of meeting you guys, and couldn't be prouder of being accepted onto the mastermind group, and the amazing people I've met as a result. It really has been life-changing. There's love and support that we've got for each other. It's just like a more extension to my friends and family. And it's not just, as you say, in the room, it's outside of the room. And knowing that you've got people that you could just pick up and say, I don't know how to, and they would absolutely help you. And that's that safe space. And I think all of us would agree that it's been, the best decision that we've made. We've made some amazing connections already. We're only on month 5. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when we get to the end of the year. But I know I've made friends for life, and that means the world.
That's so wonderful. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think what I wanted to explain on this is not just because it's so gorgeous for Thomas and I to get endorsements and testimonials, and that's great for our validation. But also, I think the big message here is that investing in yourself is critical. As we move into 2020, and some people will be watching this beyond 2020, I think the big shift that you can take in your life is investing in skills, investing in people who will give you things that will move you forward, maybe take you out of your comfort zone. And I'm sure your clients find that when they work with you. And it's just a joy. And I know we're all going to stay together beyond the mastermind. It's just a joy to learn from you and to hear the impact you have, and to see you speak. And so thank you, Kim. I love the fact you're in my life now. And,
ditto.
And it's been a fantastic interview with you. And I just think if anybody suffers some of the things that we both sort of talked about, but you've been able to share real advice and tips here, I hope they get in touch with you, because I know you can make a massive impact on them. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.